I am a revolutionary, and I'm here to recruit you to be part of this revolution, which will be the biggest revolution in the history of our nation since its founding, a revolution in education. I want you to imagine for a moment that we are back in 1964. That's me. Don't you love the hair? I applied to 4 colleges. So far, I've been rejected by 3. It's the last one. Dear Frederick, we regret to inform you, I don't need to read anymore. I know what the rest of it says. It says that I'm a loser. How else can I interpret it? Every school rejected my application. School taught me that I was not very bright. Life taught me that school was wrong. In my high school class, out of 212 kids, I finished number 206. I beat 6 kids. But fortunately for me, I had 2 passions that I continued to pursue. I loved being around kids, and I loved rock and roll. In fact, if you'd asked any kid in my high school class who the most passionate kid in the school was about rock and roll, they would have all said it's Fred. But no one told me that there was a way to earn a living pursuing this passion, which is exactly what I did for 39 years. But after 4 rejections, my mom told me that if you don't go to college, you're going to have a hard time making a living. And she scared me. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. This is the place that I was working when I finished high school. Wouldn't you be scared too? So I decided to go to school nights, try and get my grades up. I thought, I'll be a teacher. I love being around kids, so I reapplied to Keene State, got accepted, and 4 years later, 4.5 years later, I actually finished with a 2.3 GPA. You see, while I loved kids, I hated school. But fortunately for me, I majored in science, and so there was spots for science teachers because there have been these shortages around the country for decades. So I got my job teaching 8th grade science in Stamford, Connecticut, with an $8,000 teacher salary, which was not enough. I had a family. I had a wife and 2 little ones. I needed more. So with my life savings of $600, I opened a music store. As you can imagine, it wasn't much of a music store. That $600 bought me a store that was $75 a month. That included utilities, it included a decade's worth of dirt because this building, the top 2 floors, we were in the 2nd floor, hadn't been occupied since the 1930s. It included mice, it included dead pigeons. The place should have been condemned. But it was cheap, so I took it. And one Saturday morning, my 3-year-old said, Mom, are we going to go to Daddy's Junkie store today? And that was the start of Daddy's Junkie Music Store. At the time, there were over 11,000 music stores in the United States. We were the smallest of all of them. We grew the company from that to the 15th largest in the United States. And I will tell you, it was an absolutely amazing journey. And all along the way, I would have these people wanting to interview me and articles about me. And in fact, even got my picture on the cover of national magazines, of which I bought 5 copies from my mother. And while this was happening, I would say, how is this possible? Don't they know that I'm the loser who finished at the bottom of his class? Don't they understand that I am not very bright? And after these things kept happening, I started thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm not as dumb as I thought. Maybe I'm actually bright. But how come school never saw it? And how come school taught me those things about myself that weren't true? And how many other kids had they done this to? The answer is millions. Every year, millions of kids drop out of high school. 7,000 a day every school year drop out of high school. And for many of those kids, they too are taught that they aren't very bright. And this belief leads to oftentimes very bad places. It leads to crime, it leads to welfare, it leads to less than rewarding lives. This just doesn't seem right. So daddies, continued to grow, and as it did, I kept feeling like I had a responsibility. This success that I was feeling, I had a responsibility to kids like me to show them that they are not dumb, that they are bright. Get this thing. I love this quote. Everybody is a genius. This is Albert Einstein. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. So to me, it was like, how do we go about finding that special thing that's inside of every kid? This became a near obsession for me. But what did a different kind of school look like? I mean, I had an idea of where, what I was looking for, but I didn't know what it looked like. I love this quote by Henry Ford. If I'd asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. And if I asked most people what their ideal model of school looks like, they'd come up with a prettier version of what they already have. That's not what I was looking for. I was looking for something else. This near obsession led me to run for governor of New Hampshire. I lost. But one of the people that worked on my campaign in a subsequent election cycle worked for Craig Benson's campaign and told him that you really need to sit down with Fred. You need to talk to Fred about education. We sat down, we talked. I ended up going to work for the campaign. He was elected. He appointed me chairman of the State Board of Education. So the beauty part of what he did was he gave me this charge. He said, I want you to redesign public education, a task that most people would look at as impossible. Can't be done. But it was exactly the task that I wanted. And he gave me 2 parameters. He said, you start with a clean sheet of paper and you challenge everything. So my first day back on the State Board of Education, because I served on the board in the 90s, but now I'm back as chairman of the board. And I remember saying to the board the first day, look, this was the charge from the governor, and so this is what I expected my job is. I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I'm a 60s kind of guy who was taught to question authority, so I'm just going to ask a whole bunch of questions and we'll find out where this goes. So we held our first meeting to look at the state regulations. Members of the State Board of Education and members of the Commissioner of Education's cabinet sitting around this conference table, and we're going to talk about redesigning education. And the person that was chairing this subcommittee said, let's start with the easy stuff. Let's get through the school calendar because we're not going to do anything there. I said, wait a minute. Remember the governor's charge, challenge everything. I said, maybe we won't change the school calendar, but I want to talk about it. I know how we got to 180 days. It was so kids could work in fields in the afternoon, kids could work in fields during the summertime. We don't do that anymore. So how come it has to be 180 days? What's the magic of 180 days? The actual formalization of the 180 days goes back to 1906 at Harvard. And a conference was pulled together, funded by the Carnegie Foundation. And the prime purpose of this conference was to standardize a way to pay teachers. And they decided that if a teacher worked for 180 days and taught all day, that they were a full-time teacher and they would receive a full-time salary, whatever that was determined to be. And as part of this, they decided that we need to look at how kids graduate from high school. And so they said that, let's standardize this, 120 hours to 150 hours of classroom instruction will get you a credit, what they call the Carnegie credit, and if you got enough of these, then you would graduate from high school. So what they did was they established time as the constant, time 180 days, time 120 hours to 150 hours of instruction, and place inside of a classroom as the constant, and the variable was learning, A's, B's, C's, D's. So I decided that, to start asking, well, let me ask a question, because I think that this is important. If a kid passes gym class, they can graduate. They get credit toward graduation. But if they go to gym, they're on a gymnastics team, then they don't get credit. So why does gym class count and the gymnastic team doesn't count? And someone said, well, maybe we should count the sports teams. I said, that's okay with me. Is that okay with everybody else? Everybody else said yes. And then the $1 trillion set of questions popped into my head. And I asked, what if the school doesn't have a gymnastics team, but there's a gymnastics academy downtown? And the exact same lessons and skills that would have been learned if the school had a gymnastics team would be learned in this gymnastics academy. And you just told me you give credit for it. So let me see if I understand this. If the kid learns the desired lessons and skills inside the school, that counts for credit toward graduation. But if they learn the exact same things outside the school, that doesn't count. What do we care more about? Do we care more that the school is the first-hand deliverer of the learning experience, or do we care more that our kids learn regardless of the source of the learning? Everybody said we care more about our kids learning. Epiphany. The clouds parted, the sun shone through. I said, wait a minute. So I started giving all these examples. So what if a kid could say, look, I want Mrs. Jones for English, but I want to use my karate lessons for my physical education. I want to play in a rock band for my music credit. I want to do world history online. I want to get my automotives at the car dealership. I want to do space science at the planetarium. That is now all possible through the New Hampshire regulations. We call these extended learning opportunities. So what we have done, in essence, is said that time and place are now the variable, and learning is the constant. We want to hold kids to higher levels of learning than ever before. We'll let them do it their way. This is the grand bargain that we can make with our kids. Let them own their learning. They will take this to places beyond our wildest dreams. I could have been a star in this kind of a system. How do we do this? We need you. We need you to think about what you can do to add to this system. We need doctors and lawyers, and we need accountants. We need guitar instructors. We need farmers. We need software developers. We need all of them to bring their skills to the system of public education and create options for our kids. Options that are exciting for them. Let our kids drive their own learning, with our teachers holding these kids to higher standards than ever before, and getting our kids to believe and dream beyond their wildest dreams. We can do this. New Hampshire received the 2012 State Innovation Award from the Education Commission of the States. And this concept we call competency-based learning is starting to spread from New England to Iowa to Wisconsin. It will be what public education is in the future. No longer will school be boring. No longer will we teach kids like me that we're losers and that we're not very bright. The future of education is at our doorstep, and it's called competency-based learning. And we need you. Thank you very much.